Is it time to bring back the Bonnie? This is the Great White North Report.
I'm in love with the system, never going home. I'm in love.
For those who don't know, Canada used to have an aircraft carrier called the HMCS Bonaventure, and it was scrapped over 50 years ago to cut cost. And the Bonnie was once the centerpiece of Canada's Atlantic fleet. This article from over a year ago says that New Brunswickers remember their time on Canada's last aircraft carrier. My mother's boyfriend, he once served on the Bonaventure. A little background on the Bonaventure: it was once the Royal Navy in the United Kingdom. They decided to loan Canada two aircraft carriers, the HMS Warrior and the HMS Magnificent, for service in the Pacific, and they were offered on loan with option to purchase in January 1945, and arrangements were concluded in May, but neither ship was completed by Victory Day in Japan. So the Royal Canadian Navy decided they could only afford one carrier, and it was decided to exchange the Warrior for the slightly larger HMCS Magnificent. Okay. Now, at the time, she was completed in 1945, but they decided to make improvements on her, and construction didn't recommence until 1952, 7 years later. Sounds like most of the things that are Canadian. So the Bonnie wasn't commissioned until 1957, arrived in Halifax in June that year. So we had her from 1957 all the way to 1970. From 66 to 67, we carried out a 16-month refit at a cost of over $11 million. She was paid off on July 3rd, 1970, and then sold for scrap. So we basically put $11 million into this aircraft carrier, then sent her for scrap. And it was under Pierre Trudeau's watch. So her force consisted of 34 McDonnell Douglas F-23 Banshee jet fighters, the Grumman Tracker, which was built by de Havilland in Toronto. I wonder if they still build stuff there. And the Sikorsky helicopters. And we sold it for scrap in Taiwan in 1971. So where does this get us? With no aircraft carriers. And this comes at a time when the Chinese Communist Party is investing heavily into the aircraft carrier program. They already have 3 launched. 2 of them are operational. The third one's being fitted out. And there are plans for a 4th one. Why is this important? Well, the CCP thinks that it can isolate Taiwan by using aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers project power further out in the ocean. They can use them to block U.S. ships and isolate the island. The United States is the only serious carrier force in the Pacific. I know India has an aircraft carrier, but that's about it. No one else in the region does. The United Kingdom has 2 aircraft carriers that it could send one of them out there, but that's only one. And it takes a long time for it to reach that area. And they don't have one on permanent station in the Pacific, not like they used to. France is unlikely to send one over there. And all the other countries, Italy, the same thing, and the other countries that have one, they're more like expensive toys, which they will not send out there. So it's up to the United States to keep pace with Chinese building. Currently, the United States has a lot of them. I don't know the exact number the United States has, but this is kind of like a shipbuilding race. Canada should build one domestically and put it in our Pacific fleet. So I should mention that Japan has 2 helicopter carriers. The Izumo class multi-purpose destroyer. They were converted from being a destroyer to being a helicopter carrier. And right now they're currently converting them into aircraft carriers. There's only 2 of them. They're doing this simply because the Chinese are building aircraft carriers, and they're kind of worried for their own security. Remember, the Taiwanese Strait and the Straits of Malacca are 2 choke points for trade. Currently, these things only have 7 ASW helicopters and 2 other helicopters. But the idea is they're going to put 12 or more F-35Bs on them and 28 aircraft Vistol maximum. So they're hoping they're going to be light aircraft carriers. And they decided this back in 2013. So the United States is even experimenting in Lightning carriers, which are much more capable than China's current carriers, U.S. Admiral says. And again, it's because of the Chinese Communist Party is pushing its way into the South China Sea, threatening both Taiwan and the Straits of Malacca. The Straits of Malacca are not very big. They're long but not very wide, and it's where most of the oil bound for China, Japan, and Korea go. It's the shortest route, and whoever controls that choke point will control the oil. And it scares the Chinese because it's their vulnerable spot. It's their Achilles heel. They're trying to work around it by doing the Belt and Road initiatives over land and sea to have new routes, but at this moment, still most of the oil goes through that strait. Indonesia technically controls the strait, but there's not a lot they could do if anyone really wanted to push into it. So fast Lightning carriers are smaller. They only carry like 35 planes, but they're faster and cheaper to build. So this one says a light aircraft carrier embarks with fewer jets than a fleet aircraft carrier, as many as 20 compared with more than 50 on a fleet carrier. but it costs much less and is more versatile. So they're thinking 20. I would think 24 the max. And they're multi-purpose. You could load them up with helicopters, assault craft, whatever. This is what Canada should be designing. A small, light aircraft carrier. Kind of like what we used to have, the HMCS Bonaventure. We don't need a huge thing, something that only carries a full squadron of aircraft with helicopters. Be cheaper to make. After all, the United Kingdom built 2 aircraft carriers that are going to be cheaper than our own frigates. Why can't we do the same? And we'd be able to project actual power. We're going to need to open up a 4th naval yard and probably a 5th. And we're going to have to relearn how to land on a carrier. But hey, the United States should help us out with that. And even though they're not they don't like the idea of Canada having powerful toys, they should recognize that it's to help them out as well. And there should be lots of cross-training. But anyway, any Canadians out there, let me know, should we bring back the HMCS Bonaventure as a light aircraft carrier? Even though I personally don't think we have a hope in hell of ever getting one. But it's something to think about. So my expectations are low on this point, but who knows in the future? So any Canadians out there, let me know. Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.
I'm in love with